Mugi is a risless loser who's down bad for his hot teacher but too scared to make a move. However, when his baddie classmate finds out his secret, she offers to date him as a replacement, and after using each other for months, he ends up falling for her instead. The story starts with a girl named Hanabi, who is secretly in love with Narumi, her childhood bestie, who is way older than she is. All her life, she had always dreamed they would end up together and make little Asian Aidens. Then, things start to look up in a new school year when Narumi gets hired as her homeroom teacher, and she is excited to spend more time with him. However, her excitement didn't last long as a smoking hot music teacher named Akane gets hired, and Narumi immediately starts catching feelings for her. This drives Hanabi into depression, and she hates herself for slipping up and letting some washed-up hag swoop in to steal her man. One day, on her way to class, she overhears two clowns yapping about giving up an eyeball just to have a spicy moment with the new music teacher. This makes her mad jealous, so she angrily stomps off, only to bump into none other than Akane. Akane politely apologizes for the mishap and reaches out to help her up, but Hanabi can't even stand being near her. Just then, Mugi shows up, and since he is one of those losers simping hard for Akane, he ignores Hanabi and helps Akane with her music sheets. Instantly, Hanabi clocks that Mugi is head over heels in love with their music teacher, but like her, he is also cursed with unrequited love. So after school that day, they both link up at the balcony to discuss their crushes, and Mugi confesses that Akane used to be his tutor in junior school. Since they are both losers in the love department, their misfortune somehow brings them close, and they start spending a lot of time with each other. On one occasion, Hanabi visits Mugi in his shabby dump of an apartment, and since she is in her feelings thinking about her teacher crush, she decides to seek comfort in his arms. At the same time, since Mugi Balls is bluer than Bluey and his crush doesn't know he exists, he decides to grab this opportunity to get some action. So he gently lays her cheeks on the bed, and before he starts anything, he advises her to pretend that he is Harumi. As he tries to get freaky with her, Hanabi pulls back because his breath smells like a mix of garlic and garbage juice. But he tells her to make do since this is the closest she will ever get to a pipe. She realizes his word makes sense, so she gives in, and while he explores her Bermuda Triangle, she imagines him as Narumi. So from that day, they continue to comfort each other lonely souls while exploring their bodies. One time, while they're in the middle of the freaky act, Hanabi suddenly gets a text message from Narumi saying he would like to visit her place. Mugi quickly notices the change in her vibe and asks if she is still interested in their friends with benefits arrangement, but she responds with cold silence. The next day, Hanabi gets confessed to by some random douche face, but she rejects him without a second thought because she is still hung up on Narumi. After she leaves the fool, she gets to the rooftop to think about Narumi, but Mugi meets her there to ask about the future of their situationship. She admits that her greatest fear is that one of them might catch feelings if they keep creaming each other out. But Mugi, desperate not to lose his little side action, promises he won't catch feelings since she isn't even his type anyway. She laughs because he is also far from her type, and together they make a pact never to fall in love, but to continue comforting each other with their organs. They also agree that if any of them manages to bag their crush in the future, their friends with benefits arrangement expires. The next day after school, Hanabi hangs around waiting for Mugi so they can walk home together. But suddenly, Akane, her bestie who's secretly crushing on her, shows up and asks to walk home with her instead. Hanabi almost considers her offer, but Mugi finishes up and meets her outside, so she turns down Ichin to walk home with him instead. Ichin claims she's totally chill about getting turned down, but the second they walk off, she's seething with envy. On the walk home, Mugi tries to steal a kiss, but suddenly some blonde pipsqueak materializes and screams at them to stop getting freaky. This powerbank-sized chick is Noriko, Mugi's childhood friend who grew up in the same building as him. Back when they were brats playing together, her mom always called her a princess, and Mugi a prince and brainwashed her into believing they would get married someday. This messed with Noriko's brain, and she started seeing herself as a princess who is destined to marry Mugi. Mugi introduces both girls, unaware that they've already crossed paths, as Noriko used to bully Hanabi back in the day. But Noriko immediately snaps at Hanabi to back off her future husband, and then takes her spot by his side. Hanabi realizes the shrimp hasn't changed a bit and is still the same arrogant loudmouth. So she grabs her by the shirt and threatens to toss her across the field like a shot put if she doesn't beat it. The next day, up on the roof, Mugi tells Hanabi she went too hard on Noriko, but she tells him to just be straight with Noriko, instead of leading her on. Mugi asks why she even cares about his thing with Noriko and teases her for being jealous. But Hanabi doesn't deny being jealous, and instead lets him know that she is possessive of the meat she enjoys at night. During lunch break, Mugi and Hanabi try to eat in peace, but Noriko shows up and glues herself to Mugi. Hanabi tries to feed Mugi a piece of her fried chicken, but the salty shorty snatches it out of nowhere like a thief and starts screaming at them for ignoring her. This pisses Hanabi off, so she shuts her stupid mouth and warns her to stop interrupting their lunch date. But Noriko wriggles free and fires back, calling Hanabi a manipulative snake who doesn't even love Mugi and is just using him for fun. Ihan happens to be passing by at that moment, and she overhears Noriko accusing Hanabi of using Mugi. After the pint-sized menace finishes talking trash, she bolts, vowing she'll never let go of Mugi. Later that day, Hanabi helps Narumi with carrying some academic sheets to the language prep room. Once they get in, Narumi shuts the door and the lover girl gets nervous, seeing that they are all alone.
Yeah, boy.
She realizes this might be her one chance to show Narumi how good she is at singing on microphones. However, when she tries to touch him, some strange soothing music stops her dead in her tracks. In the music room, Akane is flexing her Alicia Keys skills on the keyboard, and Narumi instantly gets drawn into her music. This pisses Narumi off, so after school she decides to blow off steam on Mugi's microphone instead. Mugi advises her to let go of this hopeless thing with Narumi and try dating other hotter guys, but she tells him to zip it and just sing away his own frustration. So after they both sing their sadness away, they sit in silence before Hanabi breaks the silence. She tells him that the reason she doesn't want anyone else is that once you fall for someone, it has to be them. This makes Mugi remember Akane and how anytime she smiles at him, his heart does a backflip. So to get rid of these hurtful memories, he tells Hanabi to stick out her tongue, and then he claps her lips like a freak. While doing unholy things in her mouth, he imagines her being Akane, and this helps him go harder on the grind. Meanwhile, on a train, Ashan recalls Noriko accusing Hanabi of using Mugi, but somehow her twisted love brain leads her to believe Mugi must be the user. The next day in school, two trap queens approach Hanabi and beg her to school them on relationship stuff. Hanabi is thrown off by their request, so during lunch break, she meets Mugi on the rooftop to tell him about it. Mugi advises her to hang out with the girls since she doesn't have many female friends, but Hanabi reminds him that Ikan is her friend, and she doesn't need another friend. Still, Mugi gets in her face and insists she give the girls a shot anyway. With their faces this close, Hanabi freezes up, thinking Mugi is about to manhandle her tongue like he usually does. But to her surprise, he pats her head instead like a cat, and then wishes her good luck. So later that day, Hanabi invites the girls to a cafe, where they discuss their love drama. The long-haired one, Ayumi, is stuck juggling a younger guy and an older rich guy, and she can't figure out who to pick. However, her bestie's take is that she should cut the broke younger one loose and lock down the sugar daddy instead. After hearing them out, Hanabi feels the situation hits close to home, so she asks Ayumi which one she actually has feelings for. Ayumi says she genuinely can't pick, since she's after the money but also wants a good rough smashing. Hanabi's shocked she can't just choose, since in her own situation she'd pick Narumi over Mugi without a second thought. So she tells the money-hungry girl to just decide already, but she keeps insisting it's tough because she wants both. Later, Hanabi sits with Echan at lunch and asks her straight up if she's crushing on anyone. Echan chokes on her food, caught off guard by the question, but Hanabi presses further, asking if she likes her crush for selfish reasons. Echan admits she does have a crush, but insists she never liked them for what she could get out of it, so Hanabi pulls her into a hug for being such a good person. Since they haven't had much time together, Hanabi then invites her to her home for a sleepover. That night, Echan nearly loses her mind, thinking about sleeping on the same bed with the girl she is dying to rub peaches with. When she arrives at Hanabi's condo, she tries her best to maintain her composure even though, deep down, she wants to eat her up. A few years back, Hanabi and Echan first crossed paths on a train, where some creep was aggressively groping Echan's cheeks. This made her really uncomfortable, and Hanabi, standing right there, noticed and stepped in to help. She pulls out her phone and takes a pic of the idiot groping her, and this scares the offender away, thinking she is about to send the pic to the cops. Once they reach their stop, Hanabi found out Echan was headed to the same entrance exam she was on her way to. So, to help her shake off the shock of what happened, Hanabi grabbed her hand and they walked to the exam venue together. From that day on, they became besties, and Echan started developing deep feelings for her. Back in the present, Hanabi and Echan stay up all night chatting about the two friends Hanabi had helped work through their romance drama. When it was time to sleep, they slept in the same bed, and being so close to Hanabi made Echan wetter than Niagara Falls. She tries her best not to get overwhelmed by her feelings, but Hanabi suddenly opens her eyes and wants to know what Echan's crush looks like. Echan tries to stop herself from spilling the fact that her crush is right here with her. However, when she can't hold on anymore, she snatches Hanabi's lips and gives her a jaw-breaking kiss. Caught off guard, Hanabi pulls away and wonders what in the Playboy mansion is going on. Echan notices her hesitation to reciprocate, so she angrily demands to know why Hanabi is dating Mugi when it's obvious she doesn't like him that much. Hanabi tries to deny she has a clue what she is talking about, but Echan grabs her face and with teary eyes tells her that she has been noticing this for a long time. Realizing she can't deny anymore, Hanabi decides to tell her the truth that there's someone she likes, but that person doesn't like her back, and that's why she is with Mugi. Echan tells her if that's the case, then she can as well be with her instead of Mugi, but Hanabi prefers hard BBC to Wet Swamp. The next morning, Echan heads back home, and Hanabi's mom sends her out to grab groceries. On her way there, she runs into Noriko, who immediately starts calling her a man-snatcher and insists she leave her man alone. But Hanabi doesn't have the patience for the dwarf, since obviously Growth also didn't have the patience for her either, so she walks past without throwing a single shade. That sends Noriko into a rage, and she starts pleading with Hanabi not to steal her man, claiming she'll straight up die if it happens. Still, Hanabi ignores her, but when she gets to a private spot, she reflects on everything that's happened. She now realizes that just like that indecisive girl, she too can't bring herself to choose between Narumi and Mugi, and she might end up losing both of them. Meanwhile, Mugi flashes back to freshman year when the upperclassmen chicks used to eye him and his friends like hungry wolves wolves on the prowl. One of them, named May, who had her eyes locked on him, took the predating a bit further by taking advantage of his innocence to swipe his V card. Back in the present, Mugi wakes only to realize he has stained the sheet with his yogurt and his rod is harder than Thor's hammer. But suddenly he realizes Hanabi is in the room and almost jumps out of his skin. He immediately tries to hide his charged joystick with the blanket, but Miss Ready to Go jumps on the bed and closes in to feel his heat. When she clocks his hard willy, she tries to say something, but Bro hugs her tight to shut her up and then embarrassingly tells her to go ahead and play with it. After they're done getting bad and dirty, Hanabi finally realizes she is a ball hugger who is comfortable touching Mugi, something she was too scared to do with Miss Scissors' style. So she tells Mugi that she feels at ease whenever she is with him, and then playfully bounces on his candy stick to drench him dry. Later that evening, after exhausting themselves, they retire to a restaurant to refuel, but suddenly, Akane walks in with a younger dude, stopping them mid-bite. Her presence causes an intense silence, and Hanabi is surprised to see her with a guy other than Narumi. She figures maybe it's her brother or a relative, but then spots the guy smooching Akane right in front of them and starts suspecting there's more going on than meets the eye. As the dude drags Akane away, Akane pauses and asks Hanabi to keep their meeting a secret, but she responds with cold silence. The next day, Hanabi spots Akane and Narumi hanging out as usual, which angers her because she's convinced Akane is a two-timing tramp. Just then, Mugi meets her and reveals that he knew the guy with Akane last night. He explains the guy used to be one of Akane's tutoring students, and he's confident there's nothing romantic happening between them. But Hanabi angrily walks away, convinced Mugi is just a fool in love who can't see that his crush is nothing but a useless hoe who is getting passed around like a blunt. Walking to class, she realizes that unlike Mugi, whose eyes are blinded by love fog, she can see clearly because she has accepted that she might not end up with Narumi, but now she can feel hatred creeping in, and it's all directed towards Akane. Along the way, she spots Akane alone, so she walks up and bravely asks if the guy from last night is her boyfriend. Akane responds with a faint smile and claims he is just a friend, but Hanabi doesn't believe the hoe because if they were just friends, then she shouldn't have asked her to keep their meeting last night a secret. She believes Akane is just trying to feed her dirty lies, so she doesn't tell Narumi what happened. However, as she tries to push for more answers, the bell cuts her off, and Akane quickly asks to meet up in the music room after school to talk more before rushing off to class. Akane had always been a cold tramp who lived for guys' attention above everything else. Even back in school, she'd flirt with her own best friend's crush, fully aware her friend was watching from around the corner. After her friend ran away in despair, Akane later met up with her, just to enjoy watching her cry. From then on, she understood exactly how much she got off on manipulating people, and would only pursue a guy once she confirmed he was someone else's crush. The same pattern played out with Narumi, as she only became interested in him once she found out Hanabi was head over heels for him, even though he wasn't even her type. So a few hours before she ran into Hanabi that day, Narumi had already asked if she was free after school and pitched meeting up at a cafe. But Akane turned down the cafe idea and asked to meet in the music room instead. So when Hanabi later confronted her about the guy from the restaurant, she gave the exact same line to meet her in the music room. The shameless hoe did this with only one intention in mind, to see the look of devastation on Hanabi's face. After school that day, Akane meets certified lover boy in the music room and asks what he wants to talk about. After summoning all the courage in this world, Narumi finally mans up and confesses his feelings to her. Right at that exact second, Hanabi walks in and catches the confession, and her stomach drops straight through the floor. When she gets to the language prep room, she tries to cry, but the tears just aren't coming. Suddenly, the crushing sadness over Narumi shifts into admiration, since unlike her, he actually found the guts to confess to his crush. She wishes she'd had that same courage to tell Narumi how she felt back when they used to be close all the time. Instead, she fumbled all the opportunities, and now she is convinced she's lost him for good. A few moments later, Hanabi arrives at Mugi's shack to share what's going on with him, so they both share in the pain of losing their crushes. But eventually, she decides against putting him through that pain, and instead just walks off. On her way home, she runs into Ishan, who admits she'd been trailing behind her this whole time. Hanabi's stunned that despite how harshly she rejected her, Achan's still stuck on her, so she runs into her arms to cry. Taking advantage of this, Akane delivers a smooth kiss to her lips, and then takes her home to finish what she started. But Hanabi admits that she is a bit nervous moving further, and Ekin thinks it's because she is a girl. However, Hanabi tells her it's because they are beasties, and she doesn't want to spoil that. Still, Akane doesn't give a middle finger if they are beasties or not, as all she wants is a taste of that creamy honey pot. As she dumps another kiss on Hanabi's lip, she notices Hanabi is all teary and decides to chill, but Hanabi tells her not to stop because she likes it. As they swipe creamy matter, all Hanabi could think about was how things would have turned out if she had confessed to Narumi. Later that night, as Hanabi heads home, she's convinced she can't go back to being friends with Ekin after tasting each other's WAP. Suddenly, she gets hit with a trance of her younger self scolding her for messing up by taking advantage of someone's feelings for her own pleasure. Her younger self calls her scum, saying she is no different from Akane, who is currently toying with Narumi's feelings for her enjoyment, and then runs off. After the trance wears off, Hanabi realizes she is just a manipulator like Akane, but the difference is that Akane plays the game better, so she decides to accept who she is and vows to change so she can best Akane in her own game. The next morning, Hanabi confronts Akane for toying with Narumi, and that's when she finds out that the witch also knew Mugi was simping hard for her too. Hanabi demands to know what she stands to gain by manipulating simps like this. So, with her full chest, the nutcase admits that there is no greater pleasure than being desired by men, and then licks her lips like a beat-up Hisoka. Years back, when Hanabi was little, her father left to get milk and never returned, leaving her and her mom heartbroken. But Narumi was there to comfort her as a friend and brother would. In the present, Mugi thinks about how Hanabi thought he didn't know Akane was a cheap $2 hoe, but in fact, he knew all along before she ever did. Years back, when he was still piping Mei, she was the first person to learn about his crush on Akane and told him Akane wasn't worth it. At first, he didn't believe, so she took him to a joint where he saw Akane heading to a hotel with some sugar daddy. That night, he cried himself to sleep like a heartbroken sissy, and the next day, Akane still showed up to tutor him as usual. He noticed she was still wearing the same clothes, which proved she had come straight from the motel. At that moment, Mugi clocks that none of what she's doing is accidental, it's all calculated. Later, while they had dinner, Akane leaned in to swipe frosting off his cheek, but Mugi nearly gagged, catching a whiff of that motel shampoo still on her skin. Then Akane starts licking the frosting straight off her fingers, turning his brain to mush and making him stiff in more ways than one. Even though Mugi's fully aware she's running a script on him, he still dives headfirst into whatever trap she's setting. Next time he hooked up with Mei, she's disgusted he's still simping for Akane, so she chomps his ear out of pure jealousy. Back in the present, Mugi figures if it was Hanabi that knew about all this, she'd tell him to log off existence forever, but low-key, he respects her brutal honesty. Since it's Saturday and his balls are itchy, he thinks about calling Hanabi, but he decides to call Mei instead. Later, they meet, and Mugi notices that Mei looks hotter than a summer in the Sahara. Before he can say a word, Mei tells him she doesn't have much time and wants to quickly eat his mushroom, since that's obviously why he called her. Not long after, they pull up to a motel, and Mugi immediately starts eating her out. After they're done, she leaves without spending the night, and Mugi is surprised since that's never happened. The next day, Mugi and Hanabi meet up at their usual cracking spot on the rooftop. Hanabi tries to start some casual chat, but Mugi's giving zero energy back, making her realize that even though they've exchanged body fluids, deep down they're still strangers. Both of them are sitting on secrets, but neither one of them wants to talk about it, to avoid trouble. Since their fake relationship is based on comforting each other, Hanabi now has a Kan, who fills her loneliness, so she figures she doesn't need Mugi anymore. But even at that, she finds herself still craving his sugar stick, so she kisses him, and the cherry boy reciprocates the freaky energy. But then, she stops kissing when she tastes something fishy in his mouth, and wonders if he had eaten another kitty apart from hers. Mugi doesn't deny it, but tells her he suspects she also hooked up with someone, and she admits she did. He then opens up that smashing someone else felt so good, and Hanabi confesses that she felt good too doing it, so they return to sucking faces. Afterward, they move to Mugi's apartment to continue the freakiness, but Mugi suddenly notices that this time, Hanabi looks pretty frightened to offer her cheeks. Still, he wants nothing more than to demolish those fatties of hers, and when she notices his hesitation, she grabs his hand and tells him to go ahead. Meanwhile, Narumi meets Akane in the music room and asks for her response to his confession. But to Akane, he is nothing but a boring, stupid simp, so she decides to make him wait more by asking that they meet up later that night so she can give a response. That night, they meet up at a bar downtown, where Akane starts chugging down beer like Stone Cold Steve Austin, just to numb herself from how boring Narumi is. When she notices he isn't drinking, she asks why, and he admits that he is lightweight, which immediately dries up whatever wetness she might have had down there. Immediately, she leaves the sober loser at the bar and starts heading home. But suddenly she trips and almost hits the ground, but Narumi shows up to catch her. Instantly, she gets rizzed up by his Spider-Man reflexes and no longer sees him as a boring loser, so she locks lips with him. At the same time, Mugi notices a hickey on Hanabi's neck, so he decides to stamp his own there too. But when she tells him to chill, he asks if she is embarrassed to have his stamp on her too. She admits that it isn't the case and then gives him the go-ahead. Mugi tries to act like he isn't some desperate maniac, but she pulls him in, so instead of arguing, he can use that mouth somewhere else. Meanwhile, Akane takes Narumi to a nearby hotel so he can bust in her throat, but he asks if this is exactly what she wants. Akane is baffled that the moron is asking for permission to break her back, and can't figure out what Hanabi even sees in him. She then starts asking about his relationship with Hanabi, and Narumi immediately swears that they are practically brother and sister, nothing more. Blushing, Akane claims the reason she asked is that she is a bit jealous, and this makes Narumi kiss her just like she had predicted he would. Back at the crib, the bad boy goes all in, determined to make Hanabi pregnant. But the pain is unbearable, so she tosses a pillow at his face and insists he backs off. Frustrated, he lies beside her and is convinced that the reason she is acting this coldly towards him is because she doesn't love him. But Hanabi angrily insists she loves him, then throws on her clothes to leave his crappy apartment. Mugi stops her and asks if she wants them to actually start dating for real, but Hanabi refuses to give an answer and just storms off. However, when she gets home, she misses being touched and the loneliness hits her deep. The next day in the hallway, Hanabi crosses paths with Akane, who proudly whispers that last night she rode Narumi like a stallion and then walks away. Hearing this This revelation shatters whatever is left of Hanabi's heart, and by the time she gets to class, she begins to question whether toying with people's emotions is actually fun. At that moment, a deadly anger starts to build in her, and she realizes that all she wants to do is take every dude who is simping for Akane and claim them for herself. But suddenly her past self materializes in a vision, trying to talk her out of it. But Hanabi goes crazy, swearing that all she cares about is beating Akane at her own game. Her past self tries warning her that revenge won't fill the void, but Hanabi screams at her to shut up and get lost for good. The following morning, she kicks off Operation Beat Akane in her own game by meeting up with Mugi and agreeing to be his babe for real. To seal it, he kisses her, but when he pitches heading back to his place to really lock it in, she shuts it down, claiming she's got somewhere to be, catching him off guard. Not long after, Hanabi meets up with Ekin, and even though her whole plan now is playing with hearts, she can't bring herself to run that game on Ekin since she's her ride or die. So she breaks the news that she's officially Mugi's girl now, meaning the situationship with her can't keep going. But Akane couldn't care less that she's got a boyfriend, and straight up says she wants to be Hanabi's toy anyway. She then goes in for a kiss, but Hanabi pushes her away, insisting they cannot continue to see each other alone, and then runs off. But even though Akane has been brutally discarded like trash, she swears on her moist flaps that she will never let Hanabi go just like that. Later that day, it's a free period, so Hanabi heads to the library with another friend. Echan notices them leave and thinks Hanabi is trying to avoid her now, so she also shows up at the library and insists on reading with them. The girls allow her, but the second the nasty girl takes a seat, she starts rubbing Hanabi's thighs, making her super uncomfortable. The following day, Hanabi catches a cold, so Echan shows up at her apartment to be there for her as a friend. But she takes advantage of the opportunity to get freaky with Hanabi. Hanabi tries to resist, insisting they really need to stop, but Echgan tells her not to worry and promises no one will find out. She then pauses and asks Hanabi why she finally decided to date Mugi, since it was all supposed to be a game, and suspects it was because she wanted to make her jealous. Hanabi says that's not true, but Ekin's not buying it, and says that if that's the truth, it's kinda mid, since literally any girl can get some simp wrapped around her finger. She also advises Hanabi to stop opening up so easily to guys, but to seal it. And hearing this, Hanabi realizes these words are something Akane could say. She senses the sadness in Echan's voice, which makes her realize that everyone is either sad or lonely. Later that afternoon, Hanabi's mom sends her to the mall to get groceries, and on her way back, she bumps into Takuya, the gigolo who was with Akane at the restaurant. Takuya instantly clocks her as one of Akane's students and starts hitting on her, making Hanabi cringe, but then she remembers her whole grand plan to steal every guy simping for Akane, so she flips the switch and starts playing nice with him. The next day, after school, Hanabi waits for Takuya at the mall after she gave him her digits the day before, and they decide to hook up. When Takuya arrives, they spend hours inside the mall engaging in all sorts of fun activities. Not long after, they decide to slow it down and chill, giving Hanabi her opening to confirm if Takuya is actually Akane's boyfriend. Takuya admits he is one of many, and Hanabi is surprised that he is fine with just being a side guy. Takuya then leans in for a kiss, and Hanabi lets it happen since she needs him hooked on her trap. But this time she's dead set on caging her own feelings, so she doesn't end up the one played. After a few minutes of lip smudging, Takuya suggests they go do the do at a motel, but Hanabi gets scared and hesitates. She flashes back to how she could only stand Mugi's touch by pretending it was Narumi's hands on her instead, but now she's not sure she can pull off that same trick with Takuya. Takuya notices she is deep in thought, overthinking whether to go with him to the motel, so he decides to just leave. Realizing she might lose her first target, Hanabi quickly grabs his shirt to stop him from leaving, claiming that she is just nervous. The clown falls for the sob story and offers to take it slower, and Hanabi's relieved her whole scheme is still intact. Later, after parting ways with Takuya, Hanabi heads home, but when she is almost close to her crib, she catches sight of Narumi through a window and breaks down crying. Her mind drifts back to when her trash father bailed on her and her mom years ago, and how people used to whisper that he left because he never wanted her around. But Narumi was the only one who actually held her together back then, telling her it wasn't true and swearing he'd never abandon her as her father did. The next day, Mugi bumps into Ichin, who tips him off that Hanabi's messing around with other guys purely to get revenge on Hanabi. This convinces him that the hickey he spotted on Hanabi's neck earlier must have been courtesy of some other dude. Still, he can't wrap his head around why Hanabi keeps letting other guys in when they'd both agreed to actually commit, and it leaves him feeling betrayed. Later that day, Mugi and Hanabi patch things up on the bridge, and afterward he invites her over, but she turns him down, claiming she's got an early morning ahead. However, after she leaves, Mugi starts suspecting she is trying to play with his emotions, and his tramp detector starts firing off like crazy. When he gets home, he finds Noriko waiting for him, pleading with him to dump Hanabi for her since Hanabi doesn't even love him for real. However, since Hanabi is entertaining other guys, Mugi decides two can play that game, and agrees to take Noriko out. In the past, Noriko had technically been on a date once, but she spent the entire date thinking about Mugi and couldn't even remember the poor guy's name afterward. The following morning, Noriko glams herself up to look her best for the date, so Mugi will have a seizure when he sees her. Her dad clocks how much time she's spending dressing up and voices some concern, but Noriko insists it's entirely for herself and then kicks him out of the room. When she is done dressing up like a low-budget Barbie, she meets up with Mugi, but he barely registers the effort and just asks where she wants to go. Meanwhile, Hanabi's out with Takuya, who notices her earrings and asks if she got her ears pierced. She admits they're fake, since the idea of the actual piercing pain freaks her out. Takuya then teases her for it and snatches her phone to snoop on what she's looking at. When she lunges to grab it back, their bodies end up pressed close, and he pulls her even closer, but she responds with a brutal Will Smith. She then storms off, and Takuya chases her down, offering to make it up to her at a motel, but she turns him down. As he keeps insisting, it becomes clear to Hanabi that all the idiot wants is to shift her thong, and Takuya doesn't even deny it, reminding her he's a guy. He leans in and whispers all the freaky things he'd like to do to her, and Hanabi goes visibly shy. Right then, his phone rings, and while he takes the call, she's left wondering whatever happened to the guy who swore he'd take things slow. After he is done with the call, Takuya announces that he got to bounce, explaining that he found another girl who would let him hit for free. Back with Noriko and Mugi, she checks that he's genuinely fine watching the movie she picked, and he brushes it off, saying he doesn't mind, since it's what she wants. He then walks off ahead of her, and Noriko quietly wishes she could reach for his hand, but settles for the fact that he's even bothering to glance her way at all. They end up watching a mermaid movie as the only two people in the entire theater, and Noriko barely focuses on the movie. She ends up tearing up before finally sliding her hand into his. Once the movie ends, Mugi walks a step ahead of her the whole way out, telling her it wouldn't be her fault, even if the movie had been terrible. Meanwhile, all Noriko can actually think about is how much she loves him. She spends the whole walk wondering what he made of her grabbing back at the cinema, though she can't bring herself to actually say anything about it. The entire date starts feeling like a dream she doesn't want to wake up from, and when he suggests grabbing food afterward, she's just grateful the dream keeps going. Meanwhile, Hanabi stands alone on a bridge, torn about whether to call Mugi. She replays how pathetic she looked, trying to stop Takuya from walking out, only for him to leave anyway, the second she refused to give him her wet kitty. That's when it hits her that she never actually got him to fall. For her, he was only ever lusting after her, though at this point she can't even tell the two apart anymore. As she watches a couple stroll past, she wishes she had someone to obsess over her the way, but just then she realized she had turned into exactly the kind of horrible person Akane always is, when all she originally wanted was just to be with the person she loved. As tears stream down her face, she gives in and decides to call Mugi for some bouncy comfort. At that exact moment, Mugi is mid-dinner with Noriko when Hanabi's call lights up his phone, and he lets it ring out. Noriko's fighting to keep the mask up, forcing herself to smile through the discomfort since this is supposedly everything she's ever wanted. After dinner, she thanks him and says she had fun, but Mugi points out that she hasn't actually looked at him in a while and suspects something must be off. But in response, Noriko tells him she'll treasure this memory forever, desperate to keep living inside this dream a little longer. Then she breaks down in tears and tells him she loves him, and Mugi responds by kissing her. They end up back at his place, and while lying on his bed, he points out that she didn't really seem to be enjoying herself out there. She insists she did have fun, just that something was missing she couldn't quite name, though deep down she knew something was wrong. Ever since childhood, Noriko had quietly dreamed of being with Mugi, while Mugi never showed the slightest interest back. Every time he told her how he actually felt, she'd cry. And every time he'd cave and tell her whatever she needed to hear just to stop the tears. She'd learned a long time ago that there wasn't a single adult alive who could hold firm against her crying. Knowing this, she realized she would never be the innocent princess everyone assumed she was, so she decided to use this as a weapon. Even with her conscience screaming that he belonged to someone else, Noriko decided she was finally done playing the pure act and gave him the green light. As Mugi runs through her, she gets a little insecure since she is as flat as a pancake, but he assures that he won't compare her assets to Hanabi's. This relieves her, and she eventually calms down, but Mugi suddenly loses interest in tasting her cookie, so he pulls back. He explains that he can't bring himself to go all the way, and Noriko understands that to him she is just an ornament meant to be admired, never touched, no matter how badly she wants otherwise. The next day, Hanabi and Mugi meet up, and neither one brings up the obvious, the shady behavior either of them pulled the night before. Instead, Mugi proposes that they both come clean, and confess to the people they actually love before summer vacation ends, and Hanabi agrees. However, they realize they might be flatly rejected by both their crushes, yet they feel this might finally be the push they need towards something real. Later that day, Mugi and Hanabi settle in to tackle homework together, though Hanabi spends most of it complaining about how mind-numbing the whole thing is. Out of nowhere, Mugi announces he's planning to confess to Akane the second they're done grinding through it, which pushes Hanabi to quietly decide she'll do the same with hers. Meanwhile, Eken links up with her hot cousin Atsuya, and the two head off to prep school together, looking every bit the picture perfect couple. Once they're settled in class, Ekin points out he didn't need to enroll in a course all the way out in another town just for her, and Atsuya admits that's exactly why he did it. He gets visibly shy the second she glances his way, and he is struck all over again by how beautiful she's gotten since he last saw her. His whole crush traces back to reconnecting with her at a relative's funeral, and with no siblings of his own, she was the only cousin he had. Back then, she'd been floored by how much he'd grown, while he was equally floored that she even remembered his name at all. Caught up in her sauce, he impulsively grabbed her and suggested they start dating, but she slapped the creepiness out of him for even suggesting that. After class, they land at a cafe, and Atsuya tells her he genuinely doesn't care that she's got a crush on someone else. However, the gloomy look on her face already tells him it's not going well. Ekin finally admits that the person she likes is a girl, which means there's zero chance she'll ever feel that way about him. But Atsuya asks whether the girl thing is actually the obstacle, and once he notices how sad she looks, he tells her he's just happy she found someone at all, regardless of gender. However, he lets her know there's still a chance for him and that he's not letting her go. Back at Mugi's place, the books get shoved aside so they can get down to the real business. Hanabi asks if he's scared, and Mugi admits he's genuinely terrified of hearing Akane's answer, even though he knows full well it's going to be a no. Hanabi then tells him to just picture her as Akane for practice, but he pauses and admits he can't picture her as Akane anymore because he's gotten too used to her cheeks. Hanabi panics, unable to say a word, but Mugi just reminds her they already agreed to go through with the confessions and suggests they simply see where it lands. That night, as Mugi escorts her home, she realizes she's stopped mentally comparing him to Narumi somewhere along the way. When they get to her building, he turns to leave while Mugi stays back watching him go, and suddenly the fireworks go off, signaling the beginning of the summer. That night, Hanabi finds herself thinking about Narumi again, drifting back to the day she congratulated him on landing his teacher's license. After appreciating her, he grabbed her hand, bringing up the time they walked home together holding hands after she got lost, and suggested they recreate it one more time on the walk to her place. Sifting through the memory now, she figures he probably doesn't hold on to it the same way she does, but to her, nobody in the world compares to him. So she sends him a message to meet on Sunday and braces herself for what's coming. At the same time, Mugi schedules his own Sunday meeting with Akane, and she agrees. Saturday rolls around, and they finally wrap up every last bit of homework. Hanabi then lays out the plan. Mugi meets Akane in the afternoon, and she meets Narumi that night. Mugi's fully convinced they're both walking straight into rejection, but figures it's better to face it together, and proposes they regroup at the playground the next night at 10 p.m. The next day, Mugi meets up with the two-faced psycho herself, and thanks her for showing up, fully expecting to get rejected. However, before he can say a word, Akane says she is thirsty from dry-throating all night, and suggests they head to a nearby cafe. When they get there, he feels dumb for letting her steer the whole interaction, and loses whatever focus he had left the moment she starts complimenting his skin. But then he reminds himself that she probably just hopped on an old Baldi's jackknife on her way to meet him, and this gives him morale. He finally tells her that he likes her, but Akane replies that she already knew. Mugi fires back that he knew that she knew, and Akane is thrown off that he knew she knew. She then tells him she likes him back, but he doesn't believe her and calls her a pathological liar. Deep down, he figures the real reason he's liked her this long is precisely because she was always someone he could never actually have. Akane insists that she has always liked and cared about him, and upon hearing this, the simp forgets all about Hanabi and ends up in a motel with his teacher crush. As he pins her to the bed, he tells her flat out that he knows exactly what she is, a horrible, promiscuous narcissist incapable of actually falling in love. But Akane just smiles and asks why he still came with her, even after knowing all this. At that moment, Mugi feels helpless like an NPC facing off against a final boss. However, he tells her that even though he recognizes the difference in power play, he still wants to be the one to change her for the better. Meanwhile, Hanabi's waiting in the park when Narumi shows up. They acknowledge how little they've actually seen each other over summer break, and Hanabi cuts straight to it, telling him she likes him. Narumi wants to know how long this has been going on, and Hanabi breaks down crying, admitting it's been building for a long time. He crosses over and pulls her into a hug, gently trying to let her down, making clear it could never work between them. As she sobs into him, he tears up right along with her, while trying to let her know it can never work out between them because he sees her as a sister. Afterward, Hanabi pulls herself together, telling herself she's finally free to move forward with Mugi. However, she is completely unaware that Mugi, at that moment, is far too busy living his dream to spare her a single thought. A few days later, Hanabi wakes up wishing she could just disappear. Mugi never showed at their meeting spot that night, and all he managed the next day was a pathetic little sorry text. Hanabi can't help but wonder whether things actually worked out for him, though deep down she already knows that if they did, he's just gotten played. Right then, Ekin texts asking about taking a trip together, and Hanabi decides the distraction sounds exactly like what she needs. Later, the two of them land in a new city, and Ekin grabs her hand the second nobody is staring at them. On the walk to the vacation home, Hanabi marvels at how amazing amazing it is that Ekin has access to a place like this, and Sanai explains it actually belongs to a relative. Once they arrive, Hanabi's floored by how gorgeous it is, and Ichan whispers that it's just the two of them out here, which makes Hanabi freak out. But just then, Hot Boy pops out from the doorway to welcome them, scaring both of them. That evening during dinner, there's an awkward silence, and even as Atsuya tries to fill it with small talk, Hanabi can't help but notice the family resemblance between him and Ichan. After dinner, Ichan sends Hanabi off for a bath, while she and Atsuya handle the dishes, and Hanabi happily sinks into the hot water with a solid view of the forest outside. Meanwhile, Echin lets Atsuya know exactly how furious she is with him for showing up. Suddenly they get close and Atsuya tries to make a move on her, but Ekan threatens to chop off his sack if he does. A little while later, Ekan eventually sits down with Atsuya and demands to know how he even found out they'd be here, and he admits he just called her house. Frustrated, she lets it slip that Hanabi just got her heart broken, and she'd been planning to finally make her move, only for him to blow the whole thing up. But he calls that a load of nonsense and tells her what she really wants is to enjoy some plot time with Hanabi, since she'll never actually be hers. Atsuya counters that wanting a clean ending isn't exactly a crime, and he tells her flat out that she probably doesn't have it in her to let go that easily. Later that night, Akan undresses Hanabi, and Hanabi lets her run her tongue all over her plots. But then she pauses and reminds Akan they're not exactly alone in this house, so Iken tells her to keep it down before continuing anyway. The next morning, Hanabi wakes early to Ekin mumbling her name in her sleep. Trying to get off the bed, she accidentally knocks Ekin's notebook off the nightstand, and when she goes to pick it up, she finds an old train ticket tucked inside alongside a sweet wrapper. She remembers this is the same sweet she gave her the first time they met, and is shocked that the girl has kept it all these years. Hanabi then heads outside afterward and finds Atsuya already up. The air between them turns awkward fast, so he invites her on a walk to cut the tension. They end up at a lakeside where he asks who she actually has feelings for. She admits she genuinely doesn't know right now, and he pushes her to at least figure out where she stands with Akan. He warns her firmly against using Akan as a stand-in for someone else, and tells her to sort whatever is going on between them before the trip's over. The next day, Hanabi and Echin visit the park, and Hanabi realizes she hasn't seen Akan this genuinely happy in a long while. Even surrounded by strangers, Akan sneaks in a quick kiss, immediately dragging Atsuya's warning back into Hanabi's head. When they return home, Echan's surprised to find Atsuya sick, though he insists he'll be fine, and heads off to nap so she doesn't catch whatever he's got. On his way out, he shoots Hanabi a look that drags their earlier conversation right back to the surface. The girls settle into video games, and Hanabi keeps racking up wins, eventually admitting she used to play this exact game at Narumi's place. Hearing this, Eshin quickly puts the pieces together, and figures Narumi must be the teacher Hanabi is crushing hard on. Hanabi confirms this, but tells her that she got completely shut down. As she struggles not to cry over it, Akan pulls her in a hug and compliments her for handling it well. But just then, Hanabi insists that she needs to let her in on something, but Akan cuts her off and thanks her for all the time they've spent together on this trip. She apologizes for being selfish and admits she had a genuinely good time. But before she can finish, Hanabi insists it was actually her who had been taking advantage of Achan this whole time. Achan brushes it off as fine and quietly decides it's finally time to let her go. However, she vows that if Hanabi still agrees to date her, even after Mugi rejects her, then she will have to give her all the space in the world. As she steps outside, Hanabi chases her out into the rain and begs her to at least stay friends. But Akan angrily yells that it's cruel for her to ask that, and it's too late to return to being friends at this point because she has no idea how much she loves her. That's when Hanabi remembers her real mistake happened way back, the first time they played that game with scissors as brats. She tells Akan that hiding what's in her heart from everyone is, in its own way, a kind of loneliness. Akan insists she's fine being alone, but Hanabi grabs her hand anyway, telling her she genuinely wants to know more about her, and she's willing to wait as long as it takes for her to be ready to open up. Akan breaks down crying, recognizing the exact same scared look in Hanabi's eyes, and finally pulls her into a hug, agreeing to give it a shot. The next morning, Achan's nursing Atsuya back to health when she mentions Hanabi already left. He tells her she did everything she could, and reminds her she still got him around regardless. Sometime later, school starts back up, and even with a full classroom around, Hanabi feels lonelier than ever without Mugi or Achan. Nearby, a couple of students gawk at the rare sight of Noriko absolutely demolishing a loaf of bread. Once she's finished, she clocks Hanabi's gloomy expression and notices she's heading home solo. She officially welcomes her to the rejected zone, pointing out that she'd carried her feelings for Mugi far longer than Hanabi ever did, and yet she's never felt more refreshed. As she leaves, she explains that life still feels good solo, something Hanabi will figure out for herself the moment she actually tries doing it on her own. That's when Hanabi realizes that she's genuinely never once tried walking her own path alone. Meanwhile, Mugi is cooked up in his goon cave, still servicing the engine of his teacher without a care for the world. Years back, Akane's first time was with a senior whom every girl on campus admired. All she really had to do was go along with it, and the more he enjoyed himself, the more she convinced herself that meant love. From that point on, she developed a taste for taking exactly what every other girl wanted but could never actually have. She feeds off their jealousy like a wicked troll because, at that point, jealousy was the only language of affection she really understood. Back in the present, Akane wonders if she's boring him, and Mugi tells her flat out that her selfishness is precisely what he likes. She answers by kissing him, and he floats the idea of a date that Saturday, only for her to shut it down, explaining that day already belongs to Narumi. Later at school, it dawns on Mugi that it was actually the first time Akane initiated a kiss on her own, and just thinking about it makes him blush like a love-struck girl. After class, he corners her in the student counseling room and begs her not to go through with the date. But Akane weaponizes her busty cannons and asks if he is jealous. Mugi hits his limit with how infuriating she is and is genuinely stunned nobody's stabbed her yet, so he violently kisses her and then straps her to the desk. Still, Akane calmly asks if he is mad, and when he admits that he is, she tells him he's cute when he's angry. He keeps begging her to skip the date, threatening to hate her over it, but the crazy girl just tells him she'd like him regardless. As Mugi heads home, he realizes that Akane never turns anyone away, but she also never chases after the ones who leave. He figures that has to be a lonely way to live, and somehow none of it stops him from loving her anyway. That Saturday, Akane meets Narumi for their date, so they visit the aquarium, but viewing the fish tank, she realizes that between the two of them, she's lost count of how many dates they've actually gone on, and yet she still hasn't gotten laid since their very first time together. She's well aware that plenty of other guys have wanted to sleep with her without ever working up the nerve. However, Narumi's situation is different. They'd already piped on date 1, and she was basically the one who made that happen. This leaves her genuinely stumped over why she keeps showing up to these dates, acting like she's the one chasing him. While they have lunch, Akane gets fed up with how boring Narumi is and finds it irritating, so she finally concludes she can't deal with his simp head anymore. Meanwhile, Hanabi ducks back into the classroom to grab her phone and catches sight of Narumi's empty desk. Her hand drifts toward it out of habit before she catches herself and refuses to fall back into pining over him. Back on the date, Akane thanks Narumi for the day, and when he offers to walk her home, she turns him down cold. But just then, Takuya shows up with his new babe and starts calling Akane a public bathroom, where every guy dumps their snot. In her mind, Akane fantasizes about knocking his teeth out for playing salty, just because she's the one who dumped him. But out loud, nothing comes out. Takuya then turns to Narumi and warns him to steer clear of Akane unless he's trying to catch herpes in its extended family. After that, he runs off like a coward, and Akane finally decides to come clean with Narumi. She admits every word that idiot spat was fact, and she's done with that lifestyle now, though she probably won't measure up to whatever picture he's got in his head. She suggests they just call it their last date, then turns to leave. She immediately rushes to get some distance, relieved she's finally shaking off the boring loser. But to her shock, Narumi grabs her hand and tells her she doesn't have to stop being every guy's go-to hookup spot on his account. He pulls her into a hug, and Akane is surprised, but that's when she finally realizes that a simp will always remain a simp. She then asks what exactly he means by she doesn't have to stop whoring herself, and the reigning simp champion says he means it word for word. Akane wonders whether this dude's even got functioning brain cells to want her back, but Narumi interrupts her thoughts by asking whether this was really supposed to be their last date, and to her own surprise, she tells him no. Afterward, Akane spends the night with Mugi again, though her mind stays locked on Narumi and the fact that she can't seem to let him go. She asks Mugi outright whether it bothers him that she sleeps with other men, and he admits it does. When she pushes for why, he chalks it up to plain jealousy rooted in possessiveness. She admits she'd probably feel the exact same jealousy if a guy she actually wanted ended up falling for someone else. This confession makes Mugi realize she's even more childish than he assumed. However, when he remembers how he'd basically used Noriko the exact same way, he decides it's time he actually changes. Later that night, he pulls Akane into his arms and tells her he wants to actually take her on a legit date. She tries waving it off, but he won't back down and instead shouts out how much he loves her, even though he's younger than her. Akane's stunned by how hard he's pushing, so she caves and agrees to the date, then asks where exactly he's planning to take her. Somewhere in the back of her mind, Akane recalls that her one condition for the next date with Narumi was spending the whole night together. Having already agreed to a date with her student, she can't help noticing just how much she genuinely enjoys crossing that particular line. With every past hookup, the real thrill had always come from watching them turn sad or angry over her, though it never stopped her from feeling completely disconnected underneath it all. The next day, Narumi and Akane are on a trip to a hot spring, but Akane keeps dozing off on the train and Narumi thinks she is exhausted, not knowing she had an all-night service. Akane then jokes it almost feels like they're having a full-blown affair, and when Narumi takes the comment seriously and starts stammering through an explanation, she just sighs and lets it go. Meanwhile, Hanabi runs into Mito and Ayumi, who ask why nobody's spotted her around Mugi lately. Hanabi's left puzzled over why she's suddenly the topic of conversation, and Ayumi explains they'd been hoping to learn a thing or two from her, since the two of them always looked like such an attractive couple. The comment drags Hanabi straight back to the day she got stood up, and she admits they haven't actually seen each other since summer vacation wrapped. The girls continue to press for an explanation, but Hanabi just says it's for the best and leaves it at that. Back on the date, Akane is enjoying some ice cream when Narumi tells her she's surprisingly easy to get along with. That's when it hits her that she's stopped bothering to put on her usual act around him, since none of it matters anymore anyway. She then offers him a bite of her ice cream, and he reluctantly takes it. Later, they check into an inn, and Narumi's completely swept up in the view. Meanwhile, Akane couldn't care less about scenery and only wants to get some good old missionary. She then calls out to him, hoping he will understand that she wants her legs to shake, but the moron asks whether she needs water, which only frustrates her further. She angrily yanks him on top of her and suggests they rest first instead, and Narumi turns bright red and bolts out anyway to fetch the water. Left alone, Akane's stuck, wondering what exactly is going on with this guy. Replaying their actual first time together, she remembers forcing an entire mug of beer down his throat and starts wondering if it was really just the alcohol that turned him into a wild beast that devoured her that night. Later, Narumi takes a bath, drifting into a memory of visiting a hot spring with his mother, though he can't fully appreciate the current view without his glasses on. Lost in the thought that this whole trip with Akane feels like some kind of dream, he goes to get dressed and steps straight onto his own glasses, shattering them. Half blind, he stumbles down the hallway hunting for the right room, and once he finally finds it, he can barely make out Akane, who wonders what took him so long to show up. They settle in with drinks, and Akane blushes as he compliments her looks. She finally circles back to ask exactly what he meant earlier, about her not needing to stop being a hoe. Narumi then tells her she doesn't have to stop doing something if she genuinely enjoys it. Akane admits she does enjoy it, then turns the question back on him, asking how he actually feels about it. He takes a beat to think it over, and something about that pause leaves Akane completely thrown. Unable to place why he's got her this nervous, she insists he has to hate her for it, but he counters by asking whether she'd prefer he hated her instead of staying calm about it, and she admits feeling thoroughly pathetic about it. Narumi tells her he loves her regardless, but Akane can't wrap her head around loving someone who supposedly hates you. She breaks down crying, demanding to know why he loves her at all. And Narumi just kisses her forehead, admitting it's hard to put into words. His mind drifts to his mother's flowing hair, then to the very first moment he laid eyes on Akane and the resemblance they share, so he lets her hair down and kisses her. For the first time in her life, Akane doesn't feel alone. As the two of them fall into each other, she realizes she never knew it could actually feel like this, and cries, finally feeling something like real connection. The next morning, they both wake up nursing a hangover, so Akane asks if he actually remembers the night before, and Narumi assures her that he does. Later, while she's taking in the view, he walks up and asks her to marry him. Akane is caught off guard by the sudden proposal, but she agrees, warning him upfront that she'll cheat on him every day, even twice on Sundays. But the useless simp doesn't care about anything beyond the yes, and pulls her into a hug. Some days later, Akane meets up with Mugi as planned, teasing that it almost feels like a first date, but Mugi already knows this first date will also be their last. They head up a skyscraper for the view, and while Akane takes it in, Mugi drifts back to the one moment he ever caught a real glimpse of her, back when she was still his tutor. She'd told him then that she never wanted to be remembered by anyone once she died. He'd pushed back, pointing out that teaching was basically the opposite of that, since it shapes people permanently, and she explained that teaching just means she survives in their memory as a teacher. It clicked for him then that she clung to her role specifically to escape her own boredom, and quietly, he'd hoped he might be the one to eventually free her from it. Back in the present, over lunch, Mugi tells her how happy it makes him that they can still do things like this together. Before he gets any further, Akane cuts in and tells him she's getting married, and she wants to give it a real shot simply because it's something new. Hearing this, he finally realizes that people really can change, though it seems it'll always be because of somebody other than him. He congratulates her, and once the date winds down, Akane tells him they've taken this as far as it's going to go, and wonders if he thinks she's a terrible person. Mugi admits that he does, though somehow he still doesn't blame her for any of it. However, as she turns to walk away, he finally breaks down, realizing it was the broken version of her that he'd actually fallen for. So he runs after her and screams that he loved exactly who she was before all this change, and promises he won't forget it. Akane thanks him and then walks off for good, leaving him shedding tears like a sissy. A few months later, the school throws its autumn festival. While Hanabi's grabbing a drink, Mito and Ayumi track her down and pitch her on being a stagehand, swearing it'll be easy peasy. Remembering how Mugi once pushed her to actually make more friends, she agrees to it. Turning around right after, she spots Mugi walking by, and though part of her wants to call out, she lets the moment pass instead. Before all this, Narumi had already told her his wedding was set for spring break. They'd taken a walk together, and as she offered her congratulations, it dawned on her that things clearly hadn't worked out between him and Mugi's situation. Narumi seemed thrown that she wasn't more surprised, and she explained that at this point, everyone and their grandmothers already knew he was head over heels for someone. She figures she's at least responsible for getting him to ditch the contacts, though she admits she actually preferred the glasses. He asks if she'll come to the wedding, and the question drags her straight back to the pact she made with Mugi. She agrees anyway, sealing a brand new pact with Narumi to show up for his big day. Back at the festival, Hanabi's grinding through her stagehand duties when Ayumi's date shows up and she bolts to be with him, leaving Hanabi stuck, wondering who exactly she herself would want to run off toward. Grabbing a break from the crew, she wanders over to check out the exhibits and gets accidentally shoved into the middle of a fashion show. Bored out of her mind, she's about to bail when Noriko struts out in a full bridal gown. The two of them lock eyes, both flashing back to their last real conversation, and Noriko tosses her veil aside afterward, and then walks off satisfied with herself. Once the show wraps, a crowd of students swarms Noriko to gush over the dress she'd designed, and Hanabi wanders off, still visibly down. She gets back to the stage crew late and immediately catches an earful from the girl running things. She fumbles through helping classmates with a string of random tasks, capping it off by hauling a box of equipment out to the back of the school. Finding the space empty when she arrives, she decides to just sit down and rest alone for a bit, drifting into the memory of how isolated she'd been before the pact with Mugi ever existed. She then dozes off and wakes up stunned to find Mugi asleep right there behind her, though once the festival kicks back into gear, the two simply go their separate ways again. Months later, the students gear up to celebrate their teacher's wedding, and Hanabi's back to complaining about the endless labor involved. The girl in charge sends her hauling equipment to the back once more, and this time, one of the boys steps in to help out. Once they finish setting everything up, Hanabi thanks him, and he mentions he hasn't seen her around Mugi in a while. He then asks her out, but just then, Ekin swoops in and tells the guy to back off, since Hanabi's already hers. She grabs Hanabi and takes off running, though not before Hanabi turns back to apologize to the boy and genuinely thank him for the heads up, leaving him feeling better. Once they're clear, Khan admits she was only half joking with that line, but figured Hanabi could use the rescue anyway, given she'd been wanting her space. Hanabi thanks her through tears, admitting she never expected Achan to speak to her again, and Achan apologizes for taking this long to come back around. Hanabi notices her hair's shorter now, which pulls Achan back to the day they first met at school, when Hanabi complimented her for wearing it down. In the present, Hanabi tells her the new cut suits her just as well, and the two of them laugh together like old friends. Later, the whole school gathers to celebrate Narumi and Akane, presenting them with a card signed by everyone. Mito and Ayumi find out Hanabi's actually attending the wedding, and can't hide their jealousy, since neither of them has ever been to one. As the girls hand Akane her bouquet, Narumi clocks Hanabi drifting off, looking gloomy, and starts to go after her. But Akane stops him and heads over herself, and then offers Hanabi a single flower pulled straight from the bouquet. Hanabi accepts it, and Akane advises her to make sure her next crush doesn't get stolen out from under her. After school, Hanabi runs into Mugi and realizes the pact they'd made together he had never really had any weight to begin with. What started as her using him purely out of loneliness had quietly turned into her falling for his warmth somewhere along the way. Shortly afterwards, she'd wondered whether the pact was void now that they'd both lost the people they loved, or whether it was time to make an entirely new one. Just then, Mugi apologizes outright for being scum, and Hanabi forgives him without hesitation. They sit and talked, and he tells her how much Akane had genuinely changed. But she tells him she already knows since Narumi ultimately chose Akane and accepted that Hanabi had been wrong about them all along. She tells Mugi he did well, and he says the same right back to her, and for the first time in their history, they skip physical comfort entirely and rely on words instead. However, in the end, they agree to go their separate ways, and in their final moment together, Hanabi tells him she's genuinely glad she ever met him, and pulls him into one last hug. Even knowing neither of them really wants to walk away from the other, they choose to say goodbye anyway. Comment Forbidden Love if you watch this recap to the end, and if you enjoy anime recaps like this, subscribe to the channel and watch this next video.